Welcome to QuickSpeak, the English podcast for learners all over the world. Today we're going to be talking about something super interesting, the science of attraction.
Okay.
Why are we attracted to certain people? What's the secret sauce that makes us click with some people and not others?
Well, it's a really great question. And the answer is it's not just one thing. It's a whole mix of different factors, like our biology,
Right.
our psychology, even our culture, all play a role in who we find attractive.
So it's not as simple as just saying, oh, I like blondes, or I like tall people.
No, not at all. There's a lot more to it than that.
Okay, so let's start by unpacking those biological factors then.
Sure.
I think we've all heard of pheromones, those invisible chemical signals
Right.
that animals use to attract mates.
Yeah.
Do they play a role in human attraction?
They do, but it's a little more subtle in humans
Okay.
than in other species. For instance, us humans, we have something called the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC for sure.
Okay.
These are genes that are super important for our immune system.
Okay, so they help us fight off diseases.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that people tend to be more attracted to individuals with different MHC genes than their own.
So it's not just about how someone looks or smells, it's also about whether their genes are a good match with ours.
Precisely. From an evolutionary point of view, this makes total sense because by choosing partners with different MHC genes, what we're doing is we're increasing the genetic diversity of our offspring, giving them a stronger immune system and better chances of survival.
That's amazing. So we're kind of subconsciously selecting partners
Yeah.
who would give our children the best possible start in life.
Exactly.
Wow. So there's so much happening beneath the surface
Yeah.
that we're not even aware of.
Yeah, and speaking of subconscious factors, there's this interesting case of androstenedione.
Androstenedione.
It's a chemical found in male sweat.
Oh, okay.
And studies suggest that it might actually influence mood and arousal in women, potentially contributing to their attraction.
So there is some truth to the idea
Yeah.
that we can be attracted to someone's scent.
It seems so, yeah. But let's move beyond the invisible stuff
Yeah.
and talk about what we can actually see,
Yeah.
Physical features definitely play a role.
I-
Attraction.
Like facial symmetry.
Yes,
I've read that symmetrical faces are often perceived as more attractive.
that's right, and there's a biological reason for that, too. Facial symmetry is often seen as an indicator of good health and good genetic quality. It suggests that a person has developed well, despite potential environmental stressors.
Right. So it's like our brains are wired
Mm.
to see symmetry as a sign of strength and resilience.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what about body proportions? Are there certain ratios that are universally considered attractive?
Well, in women, the waist-to-hip ratio is often mentioned.
Waist-to-hip ratio?
Yes, a ratio of around 0.7,
Okay.
where the waist is noticeably smaller than the hips. This is often considered attractive across different cultures, and this ratio is thought to be linked to fertility and health.
Oh, signaling that a woman is likely to be able to bear and raise healthy children.
Interesting. So these physical preferences might actually have evolutionary roots as well,
Yeah.
connecting back to our ancestors' need to choose partners who could successfully pass on their genes.
Exactly.
Are there similar preferences for men's body proportions?
Well, height is often mentioned.
Okay.
Taller men are generally perceived as more attractive, perhaps because height can be associated with strength
Right.
and dominance, traits that might have been advantageous in our evolutionary past.
So it sounds like both men and women have evolved to value certain physical traits that signal health, strength, and the ability to reproduce.
Yeah, that's right.
But attraction isn't just about appearances, right?
Of course not.
What about the role of our minds, the psychology of attraction?
You're absolutely right. Our brains are complex machines, and they play a huge role in who we find attractive. One interesting thing is the mere exposure effect.
Mere exposure effect, which suggests that we tend to like things more as we become more familiar with them.
So that's why we might start to enjoy a song we didn't like at first.
Exactly, after hearing it a few times.
Okay.
And this same principle applies to people. We might find ourselves attracted to people we see regularly, like classmates or coworkers, simply because we're exposed to them a lot.
That's true. That makes me think about how many people end up dating someone from their own social circles or workplaces.
Yeah.
Proximity seems to play a big part in sparking attraction.
It really does. Familiarity breeds fondness,
Yeah.
as they say.
But it's not just about who we see often, right?
No, it's not just that. We're also drawn to people who are similar to us.
Birds of a feather flock together.
That's the one. The similarity attraction effect suggests that we're attracted to people who share our values, interests, backgrounds. It's understandable, really. We feel validated and understood by people who are like us.
That makes sense, but then there's also the saying, opposites attract.
Right.
So how does that fit into all of this?
Well, that's where the concept of complementarity comes in.
Complementarity?
Yeah, sometimes we're attracted to people whose traits complement our own.
Okay.
So, for example, if one person is super outgoing
Yeah.
and energetic, they might be drawn to someone who's more introverted and calm.
Interesting. So it's not always about finding someone who's a mirror image of ourselves.
Not at all.
Sometimes differences can create a spark as well.
Absolutely. And these differences can be about personality traits, interests, or even life experiences. And our past experiences, especially our early relationships with caregivers,
Yeah.
can actually shape who we find attractive and how we approach relationships.
That's really interesting.
And this is where the concept of attachment styles comes in.
Attachment styles. Could you elaborate on those a bit?
Sure.
And how they influence our relationships?
So there are 3 main attachment styles: secure, anxious, and avoidant. People with a secure attachment style, they tend to feel comfortable with intimacy and independence in their relationships. They trust their partners and feel confident in their ability to be close without losing themselves.
Right. So that sounds like a healthy balance.
Yeah.
What about the other 2 styles?
So individuals with an anxious attachment style might worry about their partner's love, and they crave constant reassurance.
Okay.
They might be prone to jealousy and fear of abandonment. And on the other hand, you have people with an avoidant attachment style who might struggle with intimacy and emotional closeness. And they may appear distant or aloof, even if they do care deeply.
So it seems like understanding our own attachment style could be really helpful for building healthier relationships.
You're absolutely right. It can provide some valuable insights into our relationship patterns, our needs, and even our fears.
Yeah.
But keep in mind that attachment styles aren't set in stone.
Okay.
With self-awareness and effort, we can work towards developing a more secure attachment style.
That's good to know. I'm starting to realize that attraction is a lot more complex than I ever thought.
It is.
It's not just about looks or personality.
Yeah.
It's this whole mix of biology, psychology.
We've been talking about how our biology and our psychology really influence who we find attractive.
Right.
But we can't forget that attraction isn't just determined by what's going on inside us,
Yeah.
The outside world, our society, our culture, these things all play a role too.
That makes, beauty standards change over time.
Exactly.
They're different in different parts of the world. What's considered attractive in one place
Right.
might not be in another.
Absolutely. A good example is body size. In some African cultures, fuller figures are traditionally seen as more attractive,
Oh, interesting.
symbolizing health and prosperity. But in many Western cultures,
Right.
the emphasis is on thinness.
It's true. And skin tone, too.
Oh, yeah.
I've noticed that in a lot of Asian cultures, fair skin is considered more desirable, while in Western societies, a tan is often seen as more attractive.
These cultural differences really highlight how much our perceptions of beauty are learned rather than innate.
Yeah.
We're constantly exposed to images and messages from the media, from our families, our peers, all shaping what we consider attractive.
It's fascinating to think about how something as personal as attraction
Yeah.
is so heavily influenced by the world around us.
It really is.
It's like we're absorbing these beauty standards
Yeah.
without even realizing it.
Absolutely. It's a subtle but powerful force. And while we're talking about external influences, we should also consider evolutionary psychology.
Evolutionary psychology, okay.
This field suggests that our preferences for certain traits are rooted in our evolutionary past and things that would have helped our ancestors survive and reproduce.
So from an evolutionary standpoint, why might women be attracted to men with higher social status or financial resources?
Well, think about it. In our evolutionary history, resources were essential for survival, especially for raising children.
Right.
So it's logical that women might have evolved to find those traits attractive in a partner.
Because it signals that the man can provide
Exactly.
for her and their kid.
Yeah.
And what about men? Why might they value youth and physical attractiveness in partners?
Well, again, thinking about evolution, youth is often associated with fertility.
Right.
So men might be subconsciously drawn to younger women because it suggests they're more likely to have children. But of course, it's important to remember, this is a very simplified explanation.
Okay.
And there are tons of other factors at play in modern attraction.
Of course, we can't reduce everything to our evolutionary past,
Right.
especially with the rise of social media and dating apps. Technology has really impacted how we find and connect with potential partners.
It really has. Social media and dating apps, they've given us access to a way wider range of potential partners. But all that choice can also be overwhelming.
Yeah, that's true.
And it can be hard to form real connections when you're constantly swiping and judging people based on their profiles.
And then there's the issue of filters.
Oh,
And photo editing.
Yeah.
It feels like everyone's trying to present this perfect version of themselves online.
Okay.
And that leads to unrealistic beauty standards and makes it harder to feel confident in your own skin.
It's a valid concern, definitely. The constant exposure to these idealized images can affect your self-esteem
Yeah.
and make you feel inadequate.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that what we see online is often a carefully constructed facade,
Right. It's not real life.
not a true reflection of reality.
Okay, so we've talked about the biological influences on attraction, the psychological influences, the cultural influences. It's fascinating how all of these layers interact to shape our preferences. But what happens when we actually meet someone? Who sparks our interest? What's going on in our brains when we feel that initial attraction?
That's where we enter the exciting world of neuroscience.
Neuroscience.
When we're attracted to someone, our brains release all these chemicals that create those feelings of euphoria, excitement. These chemicals are the key players in the whole symphony of attraction.
That sounds interesting. Can you tell us more about these brain chemicals
Sure.
and how they contribute to those butterflies in your stomach feelings?
Okay, so let's start with dopamine,
Dopamine.
often called the feel-good chemical. It's associated with pleasure, reward, motivation. When we experience something pleasurable, like being around someone we like, our brain releases dopamine, which makes us want to repeat that experience.
So it's like our brain is rewarding us
Yeah.
for being around someone we find attractive.
Exactly, reinforcing that attraction.
Okay, go.
Then we have norepinephrine,
Norepinephrine.
which is linked to excitement. And that fight or flight response,
Okay.
it increases our heart rate, makes us sweat, gives us that energized, alert feeling, especially when we're around someone we're attracted to.
So those nervous jitters we feel around our crush are actually a surge of norepinephrine.
Exactly.
Oh, wow.
And then there's serotonin,
Serotonin.
a neurotransmitter that's associated with mood, happiness, and well-being.
Okay.
Interestingly, low levels of serotonin are linked to OCD,
OCD.
obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Right.
In the context of attraction, this could be why we think about our crush all the time, almost obsessively.
Like you can't get them out of your head.
Exactly.
Okay, so what's the last one?
So the last one is oxytocin,
Oxytocin.
often called the cuddle hormone
The cuddle hormone.
or the bonding hormone. It's released during physical touch, hugging, kissing, even holding hands. Oxytocin is super important for building trust, intimacy, and attachment between people.
So when we cuddle with someone we're attracted to, our brain releases oxytocin, which strengthens the bond and makes us feel closer to them.
Exactly.
Wow, it's amazing how these tiny chemicals in our brains
Yes.
can orchestrate such complex emotions and behaviors.
It's amazing. And what's even more fascinating is that these chemicals are linked to the brain's reward system,
Reward system.
which is really important for things like addiction and motivation. So in a way, attraction can be a bit like an addiction.
That explains why it's so hard to get someone out of your head when you have a crush.
Right.
It's like your brain wants more of those feel-good chemicals.
Exactly. The reward system basically reinforces our desire to be near the person that we're attracted to, perpetuating the cycle of attraction.
So we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have.
from the biological and psychological factors
Yeah.
to social, cultural influences, and now even brain chemistry. It seems like attraction is this incredibly complex thing,
It is.
influenced by all these different things.
Yeah, you've summarized it perfectly. Attraction is a tapestry woven from our genes, our experiences, our environment, and the workings of our brain. It really shows the complexity of human nature.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. I'm starting to see attraction in a whole new light.
Me too. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to learn about this essential part of being human.
Well, I think we've given our listeners plenty to think about. We've journeyed through the many layers of attraction, from basic biology to the intricate workings of our brains.
And we've learned that attraction isn't a simple formula, but this dynamic interplay of different things that shape our preferences and our behaviors.
Indeed, so to our listeners. Keep exploring. keep questioning, and keep discovering the wonders of human connection.
And remember, the next time you feel that spark of attraction, take a moment to appreciate that intricate dance of biology, psychology, culture, and brain chemistry that led to that moment.
What a beautiful thought. And to all our listeners out there who are learning English, we have some great resources for you on our website. You can find vocabulary lists, exercises, and quizzes related to today's episode. The link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to QuickSpeak for more fascinating conversations.